about the neurological impact that it has on men and women when they establish a mental and a spiritual and an emotional bond prior to having sex. She calls it bonding compound, and she said that it is known throughout the medical field that women produce bonding compound for their children, the connection between the mother and the child, but as well for men. So the mental and the spiritual and the emotional stimulation is building bonding compound within this woman, but it's also taking place within the man. Men just are acclimated towards it slower. So as the relationship develops and blossoms, you are building this substance that will solidify the relationship for a long-term projection. But if you let a brother come in and hit it in the beginning, then the possibility of him staying and being with you long term and taking care of your child, if a child is produced, are slim next to none. So there's a science behind this. And when she wrote it, I was like, oh my God, we've been blaming the brothers all this time. You know, Papa was a Rolling Stone. But we as women have to accept responsibility and understand the power of your womb. You don't play with that. You don't play with that. You don't. So understanding, this is science, and this is what's so fascinating to me, because I always take our behavior and put it into a mathematical and a scientific equation to make it make sense, to tie it all back to God. We have to be going back into getting into being righteous. And, people say, well, that's you're boring. Like, you're whack. You're too judgmental. You're too this. You're too, like, we can't have fun without smoking blunts and drinking 40s and, having sex all the time. That's the nigga mentality. God didn't make niggas. The white man made niggas. And that's where we as women have gotten this whole thing twisted. Like, there's this big army of the sisterhood of traveling pants where we're all going to get together and, have this. No, that's not even reflected in the society, but it's funny because, in one breath, the black woman who's in the corporate world who, has made her bones, has made all of these different, accolades in the corporate world, she's the white man's nigga. I see this a lot. Then totally minimizing what a lot of these sisters have to go through in order to get to where they are. That's not to say that there's not sisters in prime positions who have not totally taken on the mind of the oppressor, if you will, because there are, and I see those type of sisters all the time, and that's another story. But minimizing what sisters go through in order to make their way in the corporate world, or just in the white world in general. It was never only the black men. And I think a lot of these brothers forget that we were on those ships too. We were getting raped when you were picking cotton. Our mothers were getting raped. There were sisters who were pregnant when they came to these shores with the slave masters' babies. We're in the prisons. We're being miseducated. We're seeing videos all the time now of black girls being slung by their hair in the school and being disrespected and being handcuffed because they have Afro puffs and, totally being ostracized and disrespected in this society constantly. And I don't think a lot of brothers realize the magnitude of what it is to be a black woman in this society. If we have to understand and respect and make amends for your burden, that has to be reciprocal. If we really want to heal. The question is, do we really want to heal? There are so many videos and channels and YouTube channels now with black men who literally live to disrespect black women. Like videos showing, ratchet black women. And you got these brothers who are on YouTube, and I ain't gonna say no names, who are blatantly disrespectful to black women. And who have large followings. Like, where are these people from? Like, what type of man are you to actually sit around and spend your time watching another man sit around and talk about your mother? Because that's what we're talking about here. Your mother, not your direct mother, but your indirect mother. We've lost that connection, that link. A lot of these brothers have white men's minds. I'm going to say that again. There are a lot of black men who are walking and talking and living and breathing in this country who have white men's minds. You need to take your mind back, brother, because you are not only destroying yourself, but you are putting information out into the World Wide Web that is going to last for infinity as far as we know. People will be able to go back and watch this information. Your children and your children's children will have access to this information. the African proverb says that we are responsible for 7 generations coming up behind us. So what will 7 generations coming behind us say about Tommy Sotomayor? What legacy is he leaving? Bigging up white women and talking about how phenomenal they are, and then disrespecting black women. And we could talk about, I could give you 1,000 examples off the top of my head of how scandalous and conniving and vindictive and manipulative white women are. You're not going to talk about that? What's your agenda? You know what I mean? So the other, to always bring balance, we talk about black women, black men respecting black women. Black women have to earn black men's respect. And Dr. Frances Cress Welsing said it in her book, The ISIS Papers. And if you're not familiar with her work, I'm not going to say shame on you. I'm just going to say, please make sure you go and purchase The ISIS Papers and YouTube her, because she was one of the forthright, most astounding scholars of our time. But she talked about the fact that black women, as the mothers of civilization, we have to earn our men's respect. I'm very cognizant of that. So I'm very cognizant in how I interact with our brothers, and how I project myself to other women, to young men in particular. I work with young black boys, earning their respect. I want you to see me up here. Okay, you see the physical, but I want you to understand that I do love you, that I do care about you, that we still have loved you in your madness, because our brothers a lot of them are out of their minds right now. We still love you in your madness, but you can't stay in your madness. Otherwise, you're an enemy to our people, which means you're no better than the white man. A lot of these brothers who are on social media, they come on my page, like the comments that people leave, just like on some, I want to hit that. It's like, bruh, I just did a whole video talking about science. That's all you have to say, and then that goes back to sex and how our men are being ruled and controlled by sex. So, it's a very interesting dynamic how when we talk about black women having to accept accountability, and then they start pointing the finger at the brothers. And then when the brothers start we talk about the black men having to have accountability, and they start pointing the finger at the women. We have to stop doing that. If we're talking about Erykah Badu and we're talking about skirt hymns, let's just talk about that and stop talking about rape statistics and, throwing everything else into the conversation. Some of that's relevant, but we can have a simple conversation and be intelligent without having to go all over the planet, because we never get anything accomplished. Women, in understanding the power of the woman, we right now think that our power is in sex, and that is absolutely not true. The greatest power that we have as women, and it's taking me time as a woman to cultivate this within myself, because of the way that I grew up. Our greatest power is in being nurturing and being compassionate and being kind and being understanding and listening and humbling ourselves at times when we may not necessarily want to do it. It takes a very refined and astute woman to humble herself when she may even be right. Understanding the proper way to talk to and deal with our men, to tap into his God consciousness, to help him to elevate himself outside of the parameters of this society. I know what I deal with as a black woman. I can't even fathom all of the little innuendo things that happen to our sons and our men on a daily basis that chip away at the fiber of your being. We as women have to understand that this is what they're dealing with. We have brothers out here who have issues with money and unemployment and whatnot. And we're stepping back and saying, well, he ain't doing this and he ain't doing that. And I said this in an interview in Houston. I said, well, if we have all of this gain in the corporate world and we've had all this success in the corporate world, at what point do we take all of that success and turn that into a benefit for our men? We should be operating and governing ourselves from the principle of ma'at, truth, balance, reciprocity, and justice, and harmony, meaning that we interact with our men with that mindset, helping them to overcome this society. So, and that doesn't mean be a weak doormat and let some fool run over you. And, no, we submit to God. We don't submit to niggas. Let's be clear on that. It means having discernment and picking and choosing carefully the type of men that you interact with, and then helping him to tap into his greatness and his power without undermining yourself. Because those days of men trying to, get in the kitchen and cook my food and be barefoot and pregnant. Okay, I can be barefoot and pregnant, but when I finish dinner, I'm going on my computer to take care of my business. This is the modern day black woman. And if you aspire to that, don't let anybody and anything take you away from that, but be balanced. We need our men. And this is the last thing I want to say. The crazy thing is that black women now say we don't need black men, but black men need to be needed. We have to meet each other in the middle.